I was clinically dead for 3 minutes. Alright, I'm writing this from a throwaway account just because I don't want it being around my original posts. First off, I would like to start with the fact that I'm not a believer, not in God nor anything else superior. I was never curious enough to look into stuff like this, and even if God exists, I simply didn't care because clearly with multiple surgeries literally from the day I was born, I wasn't his favorite. I'm male, 27, and have had multiple heart surgeries throughout my life. Started off as a heart murmur with an open heart valve repair when I was born. Went to have an aortic valve replacement surgery when I was 16 and a stent placed in the coronary artery near my heart at 23. I'm finally clear right now and don't have any showing problems, at least for the near future. Surgeries had all gone great until the third one came around. The stent placement didn't go as planned and the balloon inflated early, stopping my heart almost immediately since the coronary artery was cut off. I was clinically dead for 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes that felt like an eternity, I felt as peaceful as ever, like coming back from a hard day at work with nothing to do for the rest of the day and knowing you have all day off tomorrow. I remember loving the feeling, but not seeing anything. Not black or white or something like that, just nothing, like a transparent background that goes on and on and on. Just as I was getting used to this feeling of laziness, the voice of my grandpa who had passed away in 2018 came around and told me, "You shouldn't get used to it. You're not staying long." Immediately after that, I woke up in the hospital bed with my mom right next to me, calling for the doctor to come. He explained the situation to me and how I was dead and they were literally about to cover me with a bed sheet when a pulse popped out of nowhere. But I wasn't surprised at all, like I already knew what happened. I never had the guts to tell this to anyone, since they would just call me crazy. And frankly, I would call me crazy too if I heard this from their POV. 4 years have passed and I'm still wondering every day how this happened. Was it an actual miracle? Was it hallucinations from anesthesia? Or am I just crazy? Nice creeps in my area. I was writing this in r/vent. Then I said to myself, this is some fucked Let's Not Meet content. This is going to be a long one, so sorry in advance. Also, English is not my first language, so grammar. For a bit of context, I need to explain how transportation works in the area where I live. So where I live, the public transportation is absolute shit. There's only one not very reliable public bus, and it is a long way walking. So the people in this residential area came up with a cab sort of system, where you pay by the seat. So one of these cabs fit up to 4 people, and a little under a year ago they decided to identify these cabs with a sticker, with a number that states the car is part of the cab line. Also, the drivers have to have an ID that has to have the cab line info. Now on to the story. A couple of times these men have tried to give me a ride, and I do my best to ignore them, but sometimes it's a little bit scary. The part of the residential area where I live is a little bit isolated, so not a lot of cars or people go through there, and I have to walk alone from my house to the cab line/bus stop. On one occasion a couple months ago, I was walking from my house to the stop, and I was wearing headphones so I wasn't paying that much attention. That was the first mistake on my part. A car pulled up over next to me. This wasn't all that strange because I had been using the cab line for a while, so when they see me they pull over so that I don't have to walk all the way to the stop. The driver said, "Hey, are you going to?" and the place of the destination. I said yes and got inside the car without checking the windshield for the ID number. That was the second mistake on my part. Here's where the alarms started going off in my head. First, the cars in the line tend to be older cars with no AC, and this was a newer car, and when I got in, he locked the doors and turned on the AC. At this point, I finally realized this wasn't one of the cabs, but a complete stranger. He began asking me things like my name, exactly where I lived, and other personal things. I responded very vaguely with my heart beating really fast. I was starting to panic, so I texted my friend my location and told him to call me ASAP. At this point, we were close to the destination, but this guy was not slowing the car down and was about to pass a stop. Then the call came through and I started to talk to my friend like he was my boyfriend. "I'm almost there, wait for me and we'll go, okay?" My friend was really confused, but when the man heard my conversation, he suddenly stopped the car saying, "Sorry, I was so entertained talking to you that I almost passed the stop. Maybe we could see each other again." Here he unlocked the car and I bolted out, barely saying anything. After that day, I became more aware of my surroundings, and I tend to only get inside the cabs and the stop, unless I can clearly see the ID of the car. A couple of my friends said that I was overreacting, but it still scared the shit out of me. Then today comes. I was walking from my house to the stop, no headphones in at this time, and when I'm halfway there, a car starts driving slowly next to me. I keep on walking, and the older man that was driving starts talking to me. "Are you Alicia's daughter? Do you live around here?" I responded no, I'm not, and kept on walking. He insisted saying that he was a neighbor, and and that he could give me a ride. I replied again that I wasn't and that I didn't want the ride. Mind you, my mom wasn't called that and has been dead for over a decade. Also, my grandma that people sometimes confuse to be my mom is not called that either, but he kept insisting. So I began walking faster, approaching the stop where there were more people. At this point, the man became angry and started yelling, saying that this is the last time he would be nice to me and offer me a ride. Then he sped up and left. Finally, I got to the stop to get inside a cab that left me in my destination. When I got to work, I told my boss and she said, "Thank God you kept walking. You could have been kidnapped." Well, yeah, that was my morning. I really need a car. To both the creeps that maybe wanted to kidnap me, or who knows, let's not meet. Then Sheppard. There are scratch marks around the door handle. That's not. There are scratch marks around most door handles. Shaky hands, wear and tear, random chance. If you go and look at your front door, there will be scratch marks around the handle. These aren't like that. My wife thinks it's the local kids. Thinks they keyed her car. Thinks they fucked up our door. Thinks they shoved our bins over to make a mess. She doesn't think they killed the neighbor's cat. She blames that on a wild animal. We got married over the summer, about 4 months ago now. Happiest day of my life. We went on our honeymoon. Nothing crazy, nothing big. Just a little cottage in the hills. Cozy. It had a hot tub, and these big iron gates that separated you from anything else. A small river, and a few dozen semi-wild sheep. We actually had a hell of a time getting there. No signal that far out, so we couldn't download the instructions on how to get the key and... Not important. Sorry, I'm rambling. I haven't been sleeping well. We were told there was a dog, not like a pet dog. An old sheepdog who refused to come inside. Long as we left the sheep alone, we were told it would be fine, but we shouldn't get too close. The last people who rented the place said it looked sick, and we should leave him to have his final peaceful days. A tiny note at the bottom saying to make double sure we closed the gate, because he would sometimes get a little aggressive, and it was best to keep him off the property proper. The first night was bliss, married life, not gonna paint you a picture. The second, we spent a few hours in the hot tub. It was outside on a balcony thing, and we could look out over the sheep. They were, doing sheep things. My wife pointed up the hill to the tree line, and we could just about see something pale and skinny in the darkness. Sure looked like a sick dog. On the third day, we needed supplies, and I know for damn sure that I shut that gate, but it was open when we got back. A sheep was in the middle of the driveway, looking around in that, sheep way. We left it alone. It was pretty much wary of us, but it wouldn't leave, so we left it alone. That night, the dog came for it. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't. He was mangy, bald all over except for thin strands of greasy hair. His legs were wrong. His body was wrong. The way he turned and looked at me through the window, like he knew I was watching. And the way he put a finger up to his lips was wrong. I'm not crazy. I thought it was a nightmare. Too much cheese before bed. Something, normal. I made extra sure to close the gate that morning though. Just a little thing. And I didn't tell my wife. The thing was pretty clear about that after all. I wonder, looking back on it, if I should have. I saw him 3 more times. The first was in the evening of the 4th day. He was squatting in a tree, up the hill, surveying his flock. Just a shadow, really. A gangling silhouette. The second time was on the last night. I saw him out the window, sniffing at the front door. He had a handful of trash, long rocks, a few sticks, a can lid bent in half. He put each one against the lock and turned it before trying to handle, like he'd seen people do with keys. The third time was as we drove away. I don't think we hit the sheep. I really don't. But he did. I saw it in his eyes. It's taken him months to find us. But now there's scratches around the door handle and things missing from our bins. My wife's car has a big scratch down one side, and the neighbor's cat was found on our welcome mat, missing its face. I only have one excuse. I haven't been sleeping well these last few months. Also, I forgot about the spare key. Never going back to that lake alone. I have several stories to share that fit the Let's Not Meet category, but I'll start with the most recent. Yesterday, I took my son fishing. He wanted to go to a nearby lake that we haven't been to in quite some time. It's not known to be a great area. For some background, last time we went, about a year ago, a car drove by and screamed nice sass at me while I stood there with my young son. This kind of garbage behavior is unfortunately expected in the area. It's also known to be a late-night hookup spot, as well as a late-night drug deal location. Due to the lake's reputation, I had made a deal with my dad that I wouldn't be there past 4 p.m. without him. On to the story. My 12-year-old son and I pulled up to our favorite fishing spot, a small pond on the opposite side of the road as the lake. Almost immediately, an older gentleman approached us, asking if there were fish in the pond. I replied that we had just gotten started, so nothing yet, but that we have caught fish in the pond on plenty of other occasions. He thanked us for the information and returned to his spot on the other side of the road. About 15 minutes later, another younger man approaches the older man with a dog. I can see and hear them chatting, but they've made no move to involve us in their conversation, which I'm glad for. I just want to enjoy a day with my son. Unfortunately, the water in the pond was incredibly low and murky, and I could tell we weren't going to have any luck. I tell my son to pack up and we'll try another spot on the other side of the lake. As we begin packing our gear into the trunk, the younger man yells over, "Sorry if my dog and I ran you off." I tell him it's no problem, and we were simply moving to a better fishing spot. He then starts telling me about how nice it is to see a mom with her kid fishing, how you don't see that very often. I get this a lot, so I'm pretty used to it. We have a short conversation about it as I pack up, and I then move towards the driver's side door to depart. Before I can leave, the younger man starts up another conversation, this time asking me how old I think he is. This feels strange to me, but I'm nice to a fault sometimes, so I answer his question. I tell him how I'm a horrible judge of age, but maybe 25? He tells me he's 38, and I'm too kind and I laugh it off saying something like, "I work with teenagers, so they always guess me well above my age, just to be mean." He asks where I work and I stupidly tell him my city. Turns out he lives there too, and starts going on and on about how he got a free apartment on such and such street because his baby mama kicked him out of their house. I think he was talking about some kind of government assistance program. Weird flex, but okay, man. At this point, I'm standing by the car door with my hand on the handle, and my son is already in the back seat. This guy can't take the hint and starts telling me about how awful his baby mama is, and how women are supposed to be submissive, quiet, and do what they're told. He specifically said, "I mean, it's cool that you can bait a hook or whatever, but you're still a woman." Now my alarm bells are blaring. This guy struck up a conversation by commending me for doing a typical dad thing with my kid. Now he's putting me down for the same thing. He's gone from being overly friendly and complimentary to agitated and ranting. I should have been rude and got in the car and left, but I've unfortunately been conditioned, like many women, to be polite even when we're uncomfortable. Instead, I start making comments in the hopes that he'll see that I'm not some meek, submissive woman who's going to agree with him. After all, I'm a tatted up chick with an eyebrow and 2 lip piercings. I don't exactly look like a submissive little housewife. I guess I was trying to make him just as uncomfortable as he made me, in hopes he'd leave me alone. After he says women shouldn't be loud and opinionated, I tell him, "Oh, well, you wouldn't like me at all." He tries to backpedal by saying, "I mean, it's okay to be loud, I guess, but don't try that with your man, you know?" I say, "My man doesn't tell me shit. I do what I want." This kind of back and forth goes on for a while, before he finally shakes his head and says, "I just don't understand what kind of woman would act like that." I reply, "A strong one." As soon as the words left my mouth, the older gentleman yells from his spot on the bank, "Yeah, say that again, honey." This distracted the creep long enough for me to hop in the car and lock the doors. I still don't feel safe enough though. Unbeknownst to the creepazoid, only 2 of my car doors actually have functioning locks, but at least they're the 2 on his side. I put the key in the ignition and turn. No dice. Nothing. Of all the times for my car to act up, it chooses now. Panic now has set in. As I repeatedly try to start my car, I can see him out of the corner of my eye. He's taken notice of my car troubles and is trying to get my attention. As he takes a few steps towards my car, the engine finally roars to life and I peel out of there. Only then do I let my composure crumble and have a long talk with my son about what just happened. To the older gentleman who took notice of my discomfort and provided a distraction, I'd gladly meet with you again any day. To the younger misogynistic creep, I don't know if I was actually in any danger from you, but my gut said I was. Let's never meet again. Oh, and to my dad, I'll make you a new deal. I'm never going back to that lake alone again, regardless of the time of day. I was nearly kidnapped at the beach when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, maybe 6 or 7, this was the mid-90s. We took a family trip to the beach in Florida. We were staying in a beach house a short walking distance from the beach. We went to the beach and I was supposed to stay inside of my mom, but I wandered off way down, and before I knew it, I was lost. A lot of the houses looked the same, and I wasn't sure which one was ours, plus I couldn't see my mom anywhere. It had started to rain, So I went to a path that I was pretty sure led back to our house. Only it didn't lead to a house at all, but instead to a parking lot. There was a big dirty van parked there. It was the only vehicle around. I was about to turn back when I noticed an overweight woman with brown hair, a hot pink tank top, and those big clunky thick glasses that were so popular in the 80s, waving and smiling at me from the passenger seat of the van. She said something like, "Oh my, it's raining. Where's your mommy? Let us take you to her. It's dangerous to be out here in the rain. You could get struck by lightning." She was very friendly, almost overly so. In the driver's seat was an overweight man without a shirt on, a heavy gray chest, and some clunky looking gold chain. He was wearing yellow tinted Elvis shades and staring at me intently. He was also smoking a cigarette, which I knew was bad. The woman stepped out of the van and kneeled down to me. She asked how old I was. When I told her, she gleefully remarked, "Oh my, we have 2 boys your age at our house. You should come over and spend the night. We got movies, Nintendo, and in the morning we got all types of cereal." I had been taught all about stranger danger, but at this point in my life, no adult had ever given me a reason not to trust them. The lady continued talking about stuff, like how the boys have go-karts and they like to drink chocolate milk. She made it seem very enticing for a 7-year-old kid, and at this point I trusted her. I mostly liked the idea of getting to play with some kids my age. Then I remembered that I needed to ask my mom first, so I told her this. She told me that that was no problem, that they lived just up the road. My mom wouldn't mind. It started raining harder, and she opened the sliding door of the van and said something like, "Let's get you out of this rain and go find your mommy." I knew logically that I shouldn't do this, but the lady seemed really nice, and I was desperately wanting to get out of the rain. As I walked to the open door of the van, I noticed an awful stench that almost made me gag. This set off alarm bells in my head that something wasn't right. There were cigarette butts all over the floor. I looked up at the man, who was not only staring at me with this menacing glare, but he had this really creepy toothy smile, and his teeth were stained dark yellow. I could pick up on a very fucked up vibe from him. I knew now that I should run, but the woman was ushering me to hurry to get in. Her demeanor had changed. She was being demanding, and trying to literally push me into the van. She sounded angry and said, "Get in already," in a tone that was the complete opposite of how she had sounded before. I jumped to the side and started running as fast as I could. The woman managed to grab my arm or wrist, but somehow I was able to break free and run back to the beach. I think she tried to chase me, but like I said, she was very overweight. I made it back to my mom, who was freaking out. I tried to explain what had happened to me, but I don't think that as a 7-year-old, I was able to convey the gravity of what had happened, and I didn't fully understand it myself. The man with the hedge shears. It was 2018, back when I lived in the suburbs of Paris. I've been playing Pokemon Go since it released, and I used to go out at night to play, always with my best friend on a voice call. It was a night like any other. Following my usual route, it was around 2 a.m., and I had already covered a good 2 kilometers. I found myself 1 kilometer away from my home, standing near a Pokestop, catching what I could while talking to my friend, just like every night. It was a residential street with a few streetlights, but quite dark as there was a field just behind it. After about 5 minutes, I noticed a man in his 30s on the opposite sidewalk, just a few meters away from me, holding hedge shears in his hand, and there was a pile of branches at his feet. I thought the man was just trimming the branches of his tree. However, when I described the scene to my friend, he said, "You should leave right away. No one does gardening in the middle of the night." Despite my friend's warning, I was so focused on Pokemon Go that I wanted to capture all the Pokemon before I was leaving, so I stayed. As I looked at the man, I realized he wasn't cutting any branches. He was only staring at me. He would occasionally move and hide behind a parked van nearby, while spying on me through the windows. However, he knew very well that I could see him, and I began to feel scared. Despite my friends pleading me to leave, I still hadn't caught all the Pokemon, so I hesitated to go. The man continued his strange behavior, crossing over to my side of the street and hiding behind some bushes while staring at me. Then he went back to his pile of branches and just stared at me again. Finally, I had enough. I decided to leave. I walked normally towards my home, trying not to show any fear. I had a straight path back home. My friend on the call asked me to check behind me in case the man was following me, and indeed he was, still holding the hedge shears, about 10 meters behind me. I then made a left turn instead of going straight, even though it made my way longer. I wanted to make sure that he was following me and that it wasn't a coincidence, but he continued to follow me. I picked up my pace, taking snaps just in case something happened. When I reached the end of the street, I was out of breath but safe. There was no one behind me. I entered my home feeling relieved. Suddenly, a white car pulled up in the front, stopped, and the driver's window rolled down. It was the man with the pruning shears. Now he knew where I lived. I rushed inside, locked everything, grabbed a kitchen knife, and waited until someone woke up so I could go to bed. There were no further incidents. Nobody believed me, so we checked the surveillance cameras at home, and unfortunately, I was right. If my car door wasn't broken, I don't know what would have happened. Some backstory to this. This happened 7 years ago, when I was just a little more naive and 30 pounds lighter. Still just as short though. It was a week before Christmas, and I was finishing up my shopping. My mother, aunt, and Nana were all pretty big lottery people, so I tend to get them scratch tickets and season tickets as gifts. I don't gamble really, so it's my one time buying them in a year. I always go to the same place down the street from me, and I wouldn't say I live anywhere dangerous. Not gated community level, but like a solid, children can walk around alone in the dusk out of 10. Now, I had an old Saab that was the classic, no one can drive her but me level of finicky. Sometimes, she just wouldn't start, unless you held the brake, shifted through all the gears, went to park, pushed really hard and turned the key. The roof needed to be manually put back up if you put it down, and just a lot of wonky stuff. My brother had broken the handle on my passenger side door right before this, after picking him up from scaring children at the hospital, so you couldn't open the door at all anymore. To get to the passenger side, you were either Dukes of Hazzarding it, or going through my side. So it's Christmassy, a bit of snow and sludge, but pretty normal day. I go to the gas station to get the tickets, cash only, so enough money to make my purchases in hand. There were a few people behind me in line, and a few were playing Keno in the sitting area. There's one wiry guy behind me on the side of the line, but I didn't notice much, other than he was a little closer than I personally would have liked. I make my purchases, several $20 scratch tickets, and a couple year-long season tickets, adding up to just over $400. I pay the cashier and head over to my janky little Saab, sit down, close my door, don't lock it, and begin to count and organize my change and everything. Not even 35 seconds later, the wiry man comes out and walks by my car. As he does, he stalls for just a second and tries my passenger side handle. It doesn't work, and just makes a clunk, as the handle is sort of free moving and doesn't connect to any mechanic stuff at this point. My heart dropped and my stomach got sour. My body knew to panic, but my head hadn't caught up. He immediately keeps going, walks out of the parking lot and down the sidewalk. Until I thought about it later and told some people, I didn't even consider that the man was probably going to try and rob me. Or worse. I now very religiously follow the 45-second rule, and am a lot more vigilant Christmas shopping. Creepy encounter while babysitting. G'day everyone. This is something that happened this past Friday while I was babysitting. For a little bit of context, I'm a 21-year-old woman, a college student, and I've been babysitting since I was 14. I'm not an expert on literally anything. However, over the years, I have learned caution and resilience. At age 15, I took babysitting classes at our youth center, as well as a female self-defense course. I babysit at least once a month for this one family. I like them, because they pay me more than my usual hourly rate. They have a big house with internet that I can use to do my homework, and the two kids are surprisingly well behaved and compliant. The two parents have a monthly ritual of going out at around 5 p.m. and returning a little after 2 a.m. I am always offered to sleep in the guest bedroom or stay until morning, but I usually just stay awake and abuse their satellite TV, then leave when they come back. The house is in a nice neighborhood without a whole lot of neighbors, very quiet. Also, their house is armed with an alarm system that I have to code to, and can arm and disarm it through my phone. That'll be relevant in a little while. I always take them for pizza at this place that has like an arcade. I do this so they can tire themselves out and go to bed early. Plus, the little girl that I babysit is also on a mission to win a family of stuffed animals from the prize store. So I'd be the world's worst babysitter if I didn't guide her in that pursuit. If anyone may be wondering for whatever reason, after Friday night, she only needs a daddy stuffed animal before her collection is complete. Go girl. Anywho, I'm rambling. I was sitting at a table and watching them play in the ball pit, while also texting on my phone. This couple came over and sat at the same table as me. It was a long table with parents scattered here and there, so this wasn't alarming. The couple looked normal enough. Both were probably in their mid-20s, possibly a little older. They talked to each other, but then the guy asked me, "Are you the one babysitting Dr. So-and-so's kids?" So the parents of these children are both doctors. In the specific region that we live in, this would be common enough information, but I still chose to answer their question with an irrelevant statement. "I wonder what they use to make the pizza here." Yeah, I know. I'm a master of deception. I deserve an award for my performance. However, They seemed to see right through my clever ruse. They started making weird comments. They talked about the kid's parents. They commented on the daughter and how they wondered if she would look as pretty as their mom. Okay, my dudes. I don't know if that was intended to be creepy, but I'm just going to be safe and pretend it was. Then the woman says to me, and I quote, "Do they really let you dress like that while watching their kids?" She motioned with her eyes towards my shirt, which was admittedly a little tight, though aside from a little bit of a bosom crack, not revealing. I have a thin frame and a large chest. It's 90 degrees in my region of the US right now, so it's not like I can wear a hoodie, and my tits have a Crips and Bloods type relationship with any kind of shirt that has buttons. I saw that as my cue to go get the kiddos and bring them to their prizes so that we could bounce. After some very thought-provoking philosophical debating, they both got their prizes and we headed back over to the house. So fast forward a few hours. Both kids are bathed and put to sleep. I delivered a heartwarming rendition of Goodnight Moon and read a very spooky chapter of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. Then, tucked them into dreamland. It was around 9 p.m. I was caught up on homework and was just watching TV when I heard some movement on the porch. I didn't think much of it at first, but the doorknob started rattling violently. I initially started moving towards the front door to see who it was, but miraculously, I remembered that it was late at night. I was home alone with 2 kids, and I very much wanted to live. I turned to grab my purse, which is where I keep my taser. As I'm moving, the back door starts rattling as well, and was accompanied by some banging noises. That's when I remembered that I hadn't enabled the alarm system after returning. Now, if this was a horror movie scenario, of course the alarm wouldn't have worked, and the intruders would have made their way inside. I hate to disappoint you if you were expecting something more exciting, but I enabled it again quite easily with no incident. I ran upstairs, grabbed the 2 kids, and put them in their parents' room inside the walk-in closet. I still hate that I scared them. When I gathered them up, I gave no context as to what was going on. I didn't want to tell them that someone was trying to break into the house, but in the process, the fear of not knowing seemed to be worse. I instructed them to stay there and stay quiet, to only open the door if they hear me talking to them. Then I locked the bedroom door, which is the only door on the upstairs floor that locks. I sat there with my taser out, and I hit the panic button on the phone app. Several minutes went by. Then I got the notification through the app that the alarm system was disabled. I planned on calling 911, even though the panic button already took care of that, but I found it more beneficial to arm it back. Then it disarmed again, so I armed it again. Then it disarmed once again, so I armed it once again. By this time, I could hear what sounded like 2 sets of footsteps walking up the stairs. Good job, girl. You locked yourself inside with 2 potential assailants. I was holding it together for the sake of the kids, but not too deep inside. I was scared to death. When I heard the footsteps get near the door and saw the knob twisting, I took a deep breath and pulled the trigger on my taser, just to let them know that I was armed, though it realistically wouldn't do much good. I informed them through the door that the alarm was triggered, and the police were on the way. Thankfully, I was greeted by a familiar voice. My name, it's Doctor. His name, you're safe. I opened the door, ran into their arms and started sobbing. I hadn't realized truly until it was over just how scared I really was. The kids came out. When I enabled the alarm on my phone, they both got the notification from the place they were at. Within the app, you have the option to view the porch cameras as well. When they got the notification that the panic button was activated, they saw through the camera that there were people on each side of the house. 1 man, 1 woman. When the alarm kept disarming, that was them trying to get into the house. A police report was filed by them, and I gave a statement mentioning the 2 weirdos that I had met earlier that day. Even though there was really no evidence that would directly point to them, camera footage didn't give positive IDs of their face either. So yeah, I was scared. I'm getting over it now. I'm just grateful that the couple that I was babysitting were close enough to make it to me. I hate to say it, but I find the police response time to be terrible. I'm currently back in my own apartment an hour away. I checked in once to see how the kids were doing, and they're holding up fine. I'm just glad they had the proper protection in their home, and that this didn't end up to be any worse. A special thanks to the channel members who help make the content possible. If you would like your name featured at the end of every video, click the link in the description to become a member. Thanks for watching.